It goes without saying that I have a bit of an affinity towards just about anything involving samurai, ninja, ronin, etc. So it probably comes as no surprise that a game like Ghost of Tsushima would make it on my top 5 list for Game of the Year. And while most can certainly write off everything you hear in this video as bias, hopefully I'll be able to explain in full what it is about this game that makes it more than the sum of its parts, and precisely why it deserves this placement on my list. And perhaps convince you to give it a chance as well. If you haven't already, of course. Ghost of Tsushima is a product of those that have a thorough understanding and love of old school Akira Kurosawa films. So much so that they even offer a Kurosawa mode in the game's visual options to drive home that old school feel. But the game doesn't necessarily hinge its entire value on the old school aesthetic. Ghost of Tsushima shines through with open world stealth action gameplay, beautifully detailed and expansive environments, and through characters who support Jin on his quest to save Tsushima and become the Ghost. Ghost of Tsushima tells the tale of Tsushima Island, as it is under siege by the Mongolian invasion. The leader of this invasion, one Khotun Khan, and grandson of Genghis Khan. The game sets the stage upon Khotun's invasion of Tsushima Island, with all the samurai clans on the island banding together, led by the island Jito, Lord Shimura, who is uncle and only surviving family to our protagonist, Jin Sakai. When an attempt to break their spirits goes horribly wrong, it becomes the catalyst sparking the bloody Battle of Komoda.
Samurai! Do you surrender?
The samurai army falls to the Mongols, Lord Shimura is captured, and our protagonist Jin barely survives life-threatening wounds thanks to the help of a young thief by the name of Yuna. Over the course of Tsushima's story, Jin meets a host of characters, each with their own problems and motivations for helping him save Tsushima Island. The Khan himself was an interesting character due to his intelligence and thorough understanding of the samurai way, which he uses against them at every turn.
Do you know how I prepared for today? I learned. I know your language, your traditions, your beliefs, which villages to tame and which to burn. So I'll ask you once again, samurai, do you surrender?
This forces Jin to question the reliability of the samurai code and pushes him from the code of honor to dishonorable. And as you'd expect, it becomes a point of contention between him and certain characters throughout the story.
An assassin! From Yarikawa! Traitor! You would stab the Jito in the back! No, Sakai! Control yourself.
Unfortunately, our protagonist isn't the most relatable character. I would even go so far as to call him two-dimensional, angry, or stoic. More the latter than the former. It's the characters around him that give him any real reason to show more qualities than the two you normally see. This changes Ghost of Tsushima from the story of Jin Sakai to the story of Tsushima Island and its people. In fact, there are moments throughout the story where I started to feel as if one of the characters supporting Jin was originally the intended protagonist instead of Jin himself. The characters surrounding Jin have far more complex histories and motivations that drive them. In retrospect, I realized I even had more of an attachment to Jin's horse than the man himself. The balance of creating a game that incorporates player choice in both stealth and aggression is a difficult one. Far too often I encounter games where the balance is rather one-sided. Spend focus on stealth too much and you're weak for combat scenarios. Spend too much on combat and you're trash for sneaking scenarios. Ghost of Tsushima is one of those rare cases where the developers have found an even playing ground, allowing the player to decide what they prefer to specialize in without making their other abilities suffer. Early on, while Jin is still upholding the samurai code, you'll find yourself facing encounters head-on often. One of the ways the game does this is through a mechanic known as standoffs. When approaching a Mongol patrol, Mongol thugs terrorizing the locals, or a Mongol outpost, you'll have the option to challenge them to a standoff. Standoffs are the personification of every samurai and cowboy duel you've seen in movies and TV shows, where quick reflexes are the name of the game. These abilities during standoffs can be upgraded through the skill tree with standoff streaks, allowing you to take out multiple opponents quickly after taking down the first. If taking opponents head-on is your style, there are multiple skill trees based around that alone. When combat takes off, it's a ballet of sword clashing and blood. And by the end of each encounter, Jin is covered in blood splatter from head to toe. But in staying true to the game's story of Jin sidestepping the samurai code, the game will give you stealth-based skills as you progress, allowing even aggressive players an opportunity to dabble in stealth takedowns. If stealth is the name of the game for you, as it was for me, there's a whole host of skills and skill trees you can pick from to capitalize on your desire to be a warrior of the shadows. You start to build up a plethora of tools you can use to traverse the environment and lure enemies away from each other and straight into your deadly clutches. But just like the more open or combat-oriented approach, you are not made completely useless should your sneaky tactics go awry. You are still fully capable of dispatching enemies should you get spotted and an entire base comes down on you. Your tools range from kunai, smoke bombs, wind chimes, and more, all of which can be used for stealth or open combat. The game is open enough to allow you to traverse the environments as you please. I found myself taking the ninja approach of infiltrating outposts, sticking to the rooftops, and silently assassinating enemies that wandered within my range of attack. Then using my bow to take out enemies at range or stop them from raising alarms. The game handles all this in a cohesive manner that doesn't pull you out of the experience, and switching between tools on the fly is relatively painless. And by that I mean no god-awful radial menus that seem to be the thing that all games want to use now. But while the game is incredibly polished in terms of gameplay, don't expect to find anything here that redefines the stealth action genre. Similar to games like Assassin's Creed, Ghost of Tsushima throws you into a huge open world, allowing you to explore the island and discover its secrets along the way. Unlike Assassin's Creed and, well, most of Ubisoft's games lately, you won't be climbing any towers to synchronize and reveal more of the map. Clearing outposts can help reveal larger areas on the map. Whatever you discover on your journey is what gets revealed on the map. NPCs will sprout up in camps and towns with rumors about specific locations you might want to consider checking out. These can range from side quests that give you crafting and upgrade materials, or mysterious rumors about hidden techniques and armor from warriors of legend. All of which are compelling on their own, but have clearly been done in games before. The game is split up into 3 acts, with each tied to a specific region on the island. After you've taken a major fortress from the Mongols in each region, the next region is unlocked, which also opens the next act of the story. But you can't just tackle these fortresses whenever you choose. You have to complete the story quests that eventually lead up to you taking back the specific landmark from the Mongols. This makes progression fairly linear. I personally found this as a breath of fresh air, as there's quite the saturation of open world games with 1,000 ways to handle missions, and at some point they all start to blend together. Side quests, while aiding and grounding the world of Tsushima, I found to be rather bland and admittedly quite skippable. In a relatively recent update, Sucker Punch added a new mode to the game called Legends mode. This is an entirely non-canon supernatural take on the world of Tsushima, where players can take on ancient Japanese mythical demons in 4-player co-op online or solo. Something that a part of me wished the main game would have done more with, as some of the side quests and even the mythic tales dabble into some of this, but never do anything truly exciting with it. Players can pick between 4 classes: Samurai, Ronin, Hunter, and Assassin. These classes are basically taken from Jin's options from the main game and broken up into separate entities. Legends mode offers a few different game types: Story mode, which tells the story of the 4 legends and their heroic deeds in Tsushima, Survival mode, which is basically Horde mode, and Challenge mode, which unlocks the completing the story mode. This features raids, which requires 4 players to take on its toughest challenges. Story and Survival are the only modes that can be tackled solo or co-op. Story mode takes you through grisly supernatural alterations of locations from the main game. The Mongols are also altered to include special supernatural abilities that require players to become more tactical and play to their class's strengths. For example, The assassin has a smoke bomb ability that makes him invisible and poisons enemies. This breaks their armor, opening them up to be dispatched by other players, should you be playing co-op. Legends mode also features a loot system in which players are rewarded various loot for their classes at the end of missions, and a gear score indicating their class's overall improvement, as some missions and even the raid require a certain gear score to access. For veterans of action RPGs or MMOs, this should sound very familiar. Ghost of Tsushima's VO I consider to be top class, but something about the work they've done for Legends mode feels off, where the cadence and flow of dialogue sound strangely disjointed or misplaced, and slightly lower quality.
The cursed soldiers were empowered by Io's rage, her vengeful spirit. As long as she remained, they could not fall.
It goes without saying that Sony's first-party studios have created some of the best-looking games of the past generation, and Ghost of Tsushima is no exception to the rule, showcasing what may be one of the best wind and particle simulations in a video game in a very long time. Wind blows through open fields of tall grass and flowers, maple leaves fall from trees onto the ground in bodies of water, and actually persist in the game world instead of disappearing to maintain performance. Storms and storm winds pick up, changing the entire atmosphere of the game world into something much more dreary. This all accentuated by a beautiful day-night cycle where sunsets and rises during standoffs complement samurai duels to really drive home that old-school samurai film feel. As I rode through Tsushima on my horse aptly named Kage, yes, you can name your horse, there are many times where I found myself stopping just to take in all the picturesque sights. Photo mode has certainly become a thing in games this past generation, but few games have ever actually made me want to use it the way Tsushima has. And even with all the filters and robust options the photo mode has, I found myself using very few of them, as the game's natural beauty is enough for most shots. The developers, cheeky as they are, took advantage of this by adding a haiku feature to the game. When traversing the open world, Jin can stumble upon specific spots to relax, take in the sights, and compose haiku. The verses of the haiku can be chosen from the player from a list of pre-made options for each verse. All of this while taking in some of the beautifully detailed environments in the process. Of course, you're rewarded with various headbands which are purely cosmetic. Speaking of cosmetics, the attention to detail in the armors and sword kits you find in Tsushima is rather impressive. During your travels, you may stumble upon warrior resting places in which you can find new sword kits. These include new sheath and hilt designs. Armor offers gameplay benefits such as increased health, damaged, or decreased detection rates, while sword kits, dyes, and headbands are purely cosmetic. Dyes for armor are made by gathering specific flowers in the open world and giving them to merchants in camps and towns. And if you're lucky, you may find secret merchants that specialize in dyes you can't find anywhere else. Me being the closet goth edgelord that I am, as you'd expect, I went with the darkest colors you could find. The game features a dynamic weather system where clear blue skies can quickly be overrun with dense overcast clouds or immediately turn into intense thunderstorms. While the weather is dynamic, it can, however, be influenced by your playstyle. During my playthrough, I noticed that storms were happening quite frequently, and weather would change on a dime from clear and sunny to overcast immediately. As it turns out, the weather will change based on you upholding the samurai code or embracing the ghost. Should you take the path of the ghost, you'll encounter more overcast days and storms throughout your playthrough. The life of an assassin is a dark one after all. It also makes for some great cinematic moments when clashing swords with enemy samurai or Mongols, while lightning and thunder crash all around. Another unique feature is the way that wind is used in the game. While it certainly looks visually pleasing to watch as it blows through tall grass and open fields and bends and sways the leaves and trees, it is also used as a game mechanic. Ghost of Tsushima doesn't use traditional waypoint system that you see in most open world games, but instead allows the player to highlight where they want to go on the map, and the wind will guide them in the direction they should be going to reach their objective. They even give the player full command of the wind by simply swiping up on the touchpad to call upon it at will. It's an interesting concept that adds to the game's immersion factor, but the lack of a persistent waypoint led to me constantly swiping up on the touchpad to make sure I was on the right track to my objective. Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic throwback to an era of movies that have been long since forgotten due to the need for more modernized films. It's a game clearly crafted by fans of Kurosawa films and ancient Japanese culture. Its visual aesthetic leads it to the pantheon of one of Sony's best-looking games of the past generation, and grounds itself as a linear open-world adventure. It limits itself to its story it wants to tell, and the world it wants to build quite well without suffering from open-world bloat like many games of its ilk have typecasted themselves into doing. And I take no shame in saying that it does stealth action better than the games it clearly took notes from. And while it doesn't necessarily try to do anything new or completely revolutionize the genre, what it does is exceptionally well crafted. And in an industry oversaturated with open world games with an overwhelming amount of throwaway content, a self-contained, finely crafted open world adventure feels like a breath of fresh air. And perhaps that alone is why Ghost of Tsushima takes 5th place on my favorite games of 2020. By the way, all the footage you see here is captured from the game running on PS5 through backwards compatibility. The devs unlocked the frame rate for PS5, making the game run at an unwavering 60 FPS. If you had the patience to make it this far into the video, then you must like something about it. So why not show that by giving it a like and maybe even subscribe to the channel to find out what my other 4 favorites of 2020 are. Don't forget to hit the bell to get notified on when those or any other videos land. As always, this is Corrupt Ronin telling you to stay sharp, assassins, and I'll see you next time.